Emma Holland was hired to be invisible. Instead, she became impossible to ignore. Before we get to day 29, where this clumsy, sarcastic, dangerously intelligent woman is standing in Matteo Castelli's office holding a document that could change everything, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Because what comes next involves a shattered Ming vase, a white rose warning, and the contradiction that makes this story unforgettable. Matteo Castelli controls everything. Emma Holland can't even control her own coordination. He never makes mistakes. She is a walking disaster. He doesn't trust anyone. She trusts too easily. He was supposed to fire her in 2 weeks. She was supposed to take her $50,000 and disappear. But somewhere between the spilled coffee and the late nights, the 30-day challenge stopped being about money. And by day 29, Matteo faces the one thing he can't control. The woman who was never supposed to matter suddenly does. Spoiler alert. The real question isn't whether Emma survives 30 days. It's what happens when neither of them wants it to end. The Ming vase had survived 3 centuries, 2 world wars, and a transatlantic shipping mishap, but it was not prepared for Emma Holland's shoulder bag. She knew this because Matteo Castelli told her slowly, deliberately, in an accent that turned vowels into weapons approximately 4 seconds after her shoulder bag caught its pedestal during her entrance into his corner office. Emma's hands shot out with the reflexes of someone whose entire life had been one long apology tour. She caught the vase, barely. Her coffee, however, to achieve what she had not, it launched itself with impressive velocity across his desk, a dark wave that stopped precisely 1 inch from a stack of documents marked confidential in angry red letters. Miss Holland? 2 words. That was all it took for the temperature in the room to drop 10 degrees. Emma straightened, clutching the vase like a porcelain life preserver, her resume suddenly feeling like a confession in her other hand. Matteo Castelli didn't look up from where he was calmly lifting the documents away from the coffee's expanding frontier. He was exactly what the whispered warnings had promised, tall, dark-suited, and so precisely put together that Emma felt like she'd wandered onto his floor, still wearing her pajamas. She wasn't, but her slightly wrinkled blazer and the coffee stain now decorating her sleeve made a compelling argument otherwise. "I'm so sorry, Put it down!" His voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. Emma placed the vase on his desk with the care of someone defusing a bomb, then immediately realized she'd just put a priceless artifact directly onto his workspace without permission. She picked it up again. His eyes finally lifted to hers. They were dark. Not brown dark, the kind of dark that made you forget what you were going to say. "It goes, on the pedestal." "Right. Obviously." "Yes." Emma crossed back to the pedestal, returned the vase to its home, and managed to trip over absolutely nothing on her way back to the chair she hadn't been invited to sit in. Matteo Castelli watched this entire performance with the expression of a man calculating exactly how much chaos one human being could generate per square foot. "You're here about the secretarial position." It wasn't a question, but Emma nodded anyway, sinking into the leather chair that probably cost more than her car. "Yes, I saw the posting and The posting required 5 years of experience in high-pressure corporate environments. You have 18 months at a boutique marketing firm that folded last quarter." Emma's chest tightened. She'd known this interview was a long shot. The job had been listed for 72 hours with requirements that screamed, "We don't actually want applicants," but desperation had a way of making long shots look like sure things. "I'm a fast learner," she said, lifting her chin. "And I have a photographic memory. I don't forget faces, names, or filing systems, ever." Something flickered across his expression. Interest, maybe. Or indigestion. "The position pays exceptionally well for a reason, Miss Holland. This office operates at a level of discretion and efficiency that doesn't tolerate mistakes." His gaze dropped to the coffee stain spreading across his floor. "Of any kind. I understand that. Do you?" He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Tell me why someone with your..." He paused, as if selecting his words from a menu of insults. Coordination challenges would want to work in an environment where one error could have significant consequences. Emma's mouth went dry, but the truth tumbled out anyway, sharp and desperate. Because I need $50,000 in 30 days, and the salary in your posting is good, but it's not enough. I'm out of options and out of time. Silence. Matteo Castelli didn't blink, didn't move, just watched her with the intensity of a predator deciding whether its prey was worth the chase. Family debt? He finally asked. Yes. Medical? Gambling? Poor investments? A loan we couldn't pay back. Emma's fingers twisted in her lap. My mother co-signed something she shouldn't have. If I don't come up with the money, we lose everything. Another beat of silence. Then Matteo stood, moving to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city like a kingdom. His reflection in the glass was all sharp lines and controlled power. I'll offer you a modification to the position, he said quietly. 30 days. If you last the full month without creating a security breach, damaging company property beyond repair, or compromising confidential information, I'll pay you $50,000. Cash. Emma's heart stopped, restarted, then took off at a sprint. That's incredibly generous, but it's not generosity, Miss Holland. It's a wager. He turned, and his smile was the kind that didn't reach his eyes. I'm betting you won't make it 2 weeks. The words should have stung. Instead, they ignited something stubborn and reckless in Emma's chest. Then you're going to lose that bet, Mr. Castelli. For the first time since she'd entered his office, something almost like amusement crossed his face. Almost. We'll see. Start Monday, 6 a.m. sharp. The first person to arrive is the last person I fire. He returned to his desk, already dismissing her. My assistant will send you the NDA. Read it carefully. Break it, and $50,000 will be the least of your concerns. Emma stood on shaking legs, managed something resembling a professional nod, and walked to the door without tripping. Small victories. She was halfway through the reception area when his voice carried through the open office door, low and certain. Miss Holland? Emma turned. Matteo Castelli stood in his doorway, backlit by the city, looking every inch the dangerous man the internet had warned her about in 1,000 badly punctuated forum posts. Don't be late. The parking garage was freezing at 7 p.m., the kind of cold that turned breath into ghosts. Emma's beat-up sedan sat in its usual spot under a flickering light, and for one blissful moment, she let herself believe she'd survived. Day 1 of the most insane professional decision of her life. Then she saw the driver's side window. Shattered. Completely. Glass glittered across the seat like malicious snow, and resting in the center, pristine and grotesque, was a single white rose. Emma's knees went weak, her hands shook as she pulled out her phone, the rose staring up at her like a promise. She'd researched Matteo Castelli before the interview, of course she had. She'd seen the rumors, the whispers, the carefully worded articles that danced around words like syndicate and family business. White roses were a Castelli calling card. A warning. Emma looked around the empty garage, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. She hadn't even started the job yet, and someone already knew she'd taken it. Emma didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table with the white rose and a glass of water, because throwing away evidence felt stupid, and leaving it in her car felt worse, and Googled every variation of Castelli white rose meaning until her eyes burned. The results were unhelpful. Mostly speculation on Reddit threads and true crime forums where people with usernames like Mafia Watcher 87 debated whether the Castelli family was actually connected or just really good at looking dangerous. Emma was betting on the former. By 5:30 a.m. Monday, she'd had 2 hours of sleep, 3 cups of coffee, and one very stern conversation with herself about the difference between bravery and stupidity. She was still unclear which category she fell into. The Castelli Global building looked different in the pre-dawn darkness, less like a corporate fortress, more like something that swallowed people whole. Emma badged in at 5:47 a.m., her hands steadier than she'd expected, and took the elevator to the 47th floor. The reception area was empty. Silent. the kind of silence that felt like it was holding its breath. Emma's desk, her new desk, sat directly outside Mateo's frosted glass office. It was sleek, minimalist, and equipped with 2 monitors, a tablet, and a phone system that looked like it required a PhD to operate. She set down her bag, powered on the computer, and tried not to think about the rose. Miss Holland. Emma's heart tried to exit through her throat. She spun around. Matteo Castelli stood in his office doorway, already dressed like he'd been awake for hours. Dark suit, darker expression, a cup of espresso in one hand that he drank like it was keeping him alive. "You're early," he said. "You said 6 a.m. Sharp." "I thought, early is good. Eager is suspicious." He studied her over the rim of his cup. "Which are you?" "Broke," Emma said before her brain could stop her mouth. "I'm broke." That's a very powerful motivator for punctuality. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. Might have been. It was gone too fast to tell. "Your first task is simple. I need the Hannigan contract printed, bound, and on my desk by 7:30. The file is in the shared drive, under Acquisitions, subfolder International, subfolder Q4. Do not open any other folders. Do not read anything you don't need to read. Do not make a mistake." "Got it." Emma turned to her computer, then paused. "Mr. Castelli?" "What?" "Someone broke into my car on Friday night, after the interview." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Matteo set down his espresso with the kind of control that suggested he wanted to throw it. "Explain." "Shattered window, nothing stolen. But they left." Emma pulled out her phone, showed him the photo she'd taken. "This." Matteo's jaw tightened as he stared at the white rose. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, "Go home." "What?" "Go home, Miss Holland. The challenge is over. I'll wire you 2 weeks severance for your trouble." Emma's chest constricted. "No, that wasn't a request. And I'm not leaving." Emma stood, her hands clenched at her sides. "You offered me a challenge. I accepted. Someone trying to scare me off doesn't change that. Someone isn't trying to scare you. They're sending a message." Matteo's voice was cold, clipped. "And the message is that you are a liability I cannot afford." "To who? You or them?" The question hung between them like a blade. Matteo crossed the space between them in 3 strides, stopping close enough that Emma had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. He was taller than she'd realized, broader, and absolutely furious. "You don't know what you're walking into. Then tell me." "No." "Why not?" "Because the moment you know, you become complicit. And complicit people don't get to walk away clean." His gaze dropped to her phone, still showing the rose. "Go home, Emma. Forget the 50,000. Forget you were ever here." It was the first time he'd used her first name. It sounded wrong in his mouth, too intimate, too real. Emma shook her head. "I can't. My family will survive without you getting killed over a debt. You don't know that. I know that white roses aren't suggestions." Matteo's voice was quiet now, dangerously quiet. "They're warnings, and ignoring them gets people hurt." Emma's pulse hammered in her throat, but she held his gaze. "Did you send it?" "No." "Then who did?" "Someone who wants you gone before you see too much." Matteo stepped back, his expression shuddering. "Which is why you're leaving. Now." "I'm not." "Miss Holland." "Emma, if you're going to fire me, at least use my name." She crossed her arms. "And I'm not leaving until you give me a real reason. Not vague mafia threats, not cryptic warnings. A real reason." Matteo stared at her like she'd just declared war in his own office. Then he laughed. Once, sharp and humorless. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met, or the most foolish." "Probably both," Emma admitted. "But I'm also desperate, and desperate people don't scare easy." Another beat of silence. Then Matteo turned, walked to his office, and stopped in the doorway. "The Hannigan contract. 7:30. Don't be late." It wasn't permission to stay. But it wasn't a dismissal either. Emma exhaled and got to work. The first week was a masterclass in controlled chaos. Emma learned the phone system, barely. memorized the names of 14 department heads perfectly, and developed an intricate system of post-it notes and hand signals to avoid breaking anything expensive. She also learned that Matteo Castelli ran his empire with the precision of a Swiss watch and the warmth of a glacier. He spoke in clipped sentences. He expected tasks completed before he asked for them, and he noticed everything, every misplaced file, every delayed email. Every moment Emma's clumsiness threatened to become a catastrophe. But he didn't fire her. By day 7, Emma had intercepted 6 important calls, reorganized his entire filing system, and only broken 1 mug, progress. She was locking up her desk Friday evening when she noticed the light still on in Matteo's office. She knocked softly. "Come in." He was at his desk, surrounded by contracts, his tie loosened, and his sleeves rolled up. It was the most casual she'd seen him. It was also deeply unfair how good he looked exhausted. "I'm heading out," Emma said. "Unless you need—" "Sit." Emma blinked. "Sorry?" "Sit down, Miss Holland. We need to talk." Her stomach dropped. This was it. The real dismissal. She sat. Matteo leaned back in his chair, studying her with that unreadable intensity. "You've done well this week." "Thank you." "Don't thank me. It's an observation, not a compliment." He paused. "The rose. Have there been others?" "No." "Any other incidents? Calls? Messages?" Emma hesitated, then shook her head. Lying felt safer than admitting the truth, that every shadow in the parking garage made her jump, that she checked her car obsessively, that she slept with her phone next to her pillow. Matteo's eyes narrowed. "You're lying. I'm surviving." "Those aren't the same thing. In your world, maybe they are." The words came out sharper than she'd intended. Matteo's expression darkened, but before he could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and something cold settled over his features. "Go home, Miss Holland." "Is everything—" "Now." Emma stood, grabbed her bag, and was halfway to the door when she heard it. A low, tense conversation in Italian, coming from Matteo's private line. She shouldn't have stopped. Shouldn't have listened. But she did. She couldn't understand most of it, but 3 words cut through clearly. Holland, Debito, and Esca. Bait. Emma's blood turned to ice. She walked quickly to the elevator, her hands shaking, her mind racing. The Holland family loan was bait. That's what the voice on the server room recording had said. The one she'd found by accident, the one she'd tried to convince herself she'd misheard. But she hadn't. And Matteo knew. Emma didn't go home. Instead, she went to the 24th floor records and archives and used her security badge to slip inside. The room was dark, climate-controlled, and filled with floor-to-ceiling filing systems that hummed quietly. She found the H section, pulled the drawer labeled Handhole, and flipped through files until she found it. Holland Family Loan originated. Vallo Capital Lending. Her hands trembled as she photographed every page. Vallo Capital. The predatory loan. The impossible terms. All of it traced back to a company she'd never heard of, but one that had clearly heard of her. Emma was replacing the file when she heard footsteps in the hallway. She froze. The door to the archives opened, and standing in the doorway, backlit by the hallway lights, arms crossed and expression absolutely murderous, was Matteo Castelli. "What?" he said, his voice dangerously soft. "Have you done, Emma?" Emma's first instinct was to run. Her second instinct was to lie. She went with option 3, the truth, delivered with the kind of reckless honesty that had gotten her into trouble her entire life. "I overheard you on the phone. You said my name. And bait." Emma held up her phone, the photographed documents still glowing on the screen. "So, I came down here to find out what the hell that meant." Matteo didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at her with the kind of stillness that made Emma's survival instincts scream. Then he stepped into the archives and closed the door behind him. The lock clicked. Emma's pulse spiked. "If you're going to kill me, at least tell me why my family was targeted first." "Kill you?" Matteo's voice was flat. "You've been reading too many crime novels, Miss Holland." "You locked the door." Because what I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room." He crossed to where she stood, took her phone from her shaking hands, and examined the photos she'd taken. His jaw tightened. "Vallo Capital. You know them. Everyone in my world knows them." Matteo handed back her phone. "Leonardo Vallo is a rival, a dangerous one. And 6 months ago, he started acquiring small businesses through predatory loans, bakeries, restaurants, family shops, places that couldn't fight back." Emma's chest constricted. "Why?" "Because he's building leverage. People he can control. People who will do favors when he calls them in." Matteo's gaze was steady, unflinching. "Your mother's loan wasn't random, Emma. It was targeted." The words hit like a physical blow. Emma leaned back against the filing cabinet, her legs suddenly unsteady. "Targeted how? We're nobody. We run a bakery that barely breaks even. You're not nobody. You're smart, desperate, and exactly the kind of person who'd take a high-risk job for fast money." Matteo's voice softened, just barely. "Vallo knew you'd end up here eventually. Working for me. Why? What does he gain from me making coffee and filing contracts?" "Access." The word was quiet, dangerous. "You're not just my secretary, Emma. You're my potential liability. Every document you touch, every conversation you overhear, every file you access, it's all information Vallo could use to destroy me." Emma's mind raced, connecting pieces she didn't want to fit together. The white rose. That was him. Probably. A reminder that he's watching. Matteo stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "Which is why I tried to fire you. If you're not here, you're not useful to him. And if you're not useful, you're safe." "But I didn't leave." "No, you didn't." Something flickered across his face. Frustration, maybe. Or reluctant admiration. Which makes you either incredibly brave or catastrophically stupid. "You've said that before." "Because I'm still deciding which one you are." They stood in the dim archives, the hum of climate control the only sound between them. Emma should have been terrified, should have walked out, quit, run as far from Matteo Castelli and his dangerous world as possible. Instead, she asked, "What happens now?" "Now you decide." Matteo's voice was low, measured. "You can leave tonight. I'll pay off your family's debt myself. Quietly, anonymously. Vallo will lose interest, and you'll be free." Emma's breath caught. "Why would you do that?" "Because you don't deserve to be caught in a war you didn't start." It was the first genuinely kind thing he'd said to her. It was also the most terrifying, because kindness from Matteo Castelli felt like a goodbye. "And if I stay? Then you become a target. Knowingly. Deliberately." His gaze held hers. "And I can't protect you from everything, Emma. No matter how much I—" He stopped, the sentence dying in his throat. The unfinished words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was ready to name. Emma swallowed hard. "I'm staying." "You're making a mistake." "Probably, but it's mine to make." She straightened, forcing steel into her voice. "Besides, you made me a bet. 30 days for 50,000. I'm not quitting on day 7. Matteo's expression darkened. "This isn't about the bet anymore. Maybe not for you, but my family still needs the money, and walking away now doesn't change the fact that Vallo targeted us." Emma met his eyes, refusing to flinch. "If he's going to use me as leverage, I'd rather be here where I can see it coming than out there wondering when he'll call in his favor." Silence. Long and weighted. Then Matteo did something unexpected. He smiled. Not the cold, sharp smile she'd seen before, something real, something almost warm. "You're going to be trouble, aren't you?" "Absolutely," Emma said. "But at least I'm consistent." They left the archives separately, Matteo first, then Emma, 10 minutes later, her phone heavy in her pocket with evidence she shouldn't have. The office was empty when she returned to collect her bag. Almost empty. A man stood by her desk. Older, silver-haired, wearing an immaculate suit that screamed expensive and dangerous. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and his smile was the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Holland, we meet at last." Emma's hand tightened on her bag strap. "I don't think we've been introduced." Marco Salviati, I'm Mr. Castelli's consigliere. He extended a hand. Emma shook it, noting the cold efficiency of his grip. I wanted to welcome you personally. It's rare for someone to last a full week. I'm very motivated. So I've heard. Marco's gaze was assessing. Clinical. Tell me, Miss Holland, what do you know about the man you work for? The question felt like a trap. Emma chose her words carefully. I know he's demanding, brilliant, and has very expensive taste in office furniture. And that's all I need to know to do my job. Marco studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Good. Curiosity is dangerous in this office. The less you know, the safer you are. It was a warning wrapped in friendly advice. Emma heard it loud and clear. I'll keep that in mind. Please do. Marco turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. If you ever feel unsafe, if anything unusual happens, you come to me first. Not Mr. Castelli. Me. Understood? Emma nodded, her throat tight. Marco left without another word, his footsteps silent on the marble. Emma stood alone in the empty office, her mind spinning. 2 warnings in one night, 2 powerful men telling her to be careful, to stay quiet, to know her place. She was starting to think she'd underestimated exactly how deep Matteo Castelli's world went. By day 14, Emma had developed a routine. Arrive at 5:45 a.m., coffee on Matteo's desk by 5:55, emails sorted by 6:15. Calendar reviewed, contracts organized, crises averted before they became catastrophes. She'd also developed a system for avoiding her own clumsiness. Tape on desk corners, post-its on doors, a mental map of every obstacle in the office. It worked, mostly. What she hadn't developed was immunity to Matteo Castelli. He was everywhere in the office before her, leaving after her, moving through the halls with the kind of presence that made people step aside without being asked. And lately, he'd started lingering. A comment on her filing system. A question about her family. A shared coffee break that stretched too long, their conversation slipping from professional to personal before either of them noticed. Emma told herself it didn't mean anything. She was lying. It was 11 p.m. on a Friday when everything shifted. Emma had stayed late to finish a contract that needed overnight courier. Matteo was still in his office, door open, working through a stack of documents with the grim determination of someone fighting a losing battle. She knocked softly. I'm heading out. Unless you need... Come here! Emma's pulse jumped. She crossed to his desk. Matteo looked exhausted. His tie was gone, his top button undone, and there was a tension in his shoulders that spoke of too many late nights and too few answers. You saved me $2 million today, he said quietly. Emma blinked. I what? The Thornton contract. You caught the error in the liability clause. If that had gone through, it would have cost me. Oh, that. Emma shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I just read it carefully. Most people don't. Matteo leaned back, his gaze holding hers. You're wasted as a secretary, Emma. Well, it's only for 30 days. What if it wasn't? The question landed between them like a grenade. Emma's breath caught. What are you asking? I'm asking, Matteo started, then stopped. His hand was on the desk, close enough to touch. There was a scar across his knuckles, old and faded. Emma's fingers moved without permission, tracing the line of it. Matteo went very still. What happened? She asked softly. A reminder. His voice was rough. That loyalty costs. Emma didn't pull away, neither did he. The moment stretched, fragile and electric. Their eyes met. Her breath hitched. His hand turned, palm up, an invitation she didn't understand but desperately wanted to accept. Then the fire alarm blared. The sound was deafening, violent, shattering the moment like glass. Matteo was on his feet instantly, his entire demeanor shifting from almost gentle to lethal. Stay here. What's happening? Stay. Here. He was already moving, pulling his phone, speaking rapid Italian into it as he disappeared into the hallway. Emma stood frozen, her heart hammering, the ghost of his touch still burning on her fingertips. The alarm cut off abruptly. Silence rushed in to fill the space. Then Mateo's voice, sharp and commanding. "Emma, my office, now!" She ran. Mateo stood at his desk, his face a mask of cold fury. His computer screen was open. The security feed showed the private elevator and someone standing inside it, face obscured, holding something small and metallic. "That's the executive floor," Emma whispered. "How did they—" "Your badge." Mateo's voice was ice. "It was cloned. Someone used it to access the restricted floors." Emma's stomach dropped. I never—" "I know." He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw fear beneath the anger. "But they did, and now they're inside." The security breach turned out to be nothing. A faulty sensor. A glitch in the system. Mateo's head of security delivered the news with visible relief at 2 a.m., and Emma watched her boss's shoulders drop exactly 1 millimeter before he dismissed everyone with clipped efficiency. He didn't look at her. Didn't acknowledge the moment they'd almost had, just returned to his desk and worked until dawn, like a man trying to outrun his own thoughts. Emma went home. Didn't sleep. Showed up at 5:45 a.m. on day 18, with dark circles under her eyes and a carefully constructed wall around her heart. If Matteo Castelli wanted to pretend nothing had happened, fine. She could pretend too. Except he wasn't pretending. He was punishing. For 3 days, Matteo subjected her to the coldest professional treatment she'd ever experienced. No good mornings, no shared coffee, no lingering glances or almost smiles. Just terse instructions delivered in that clipped, dangerous voice that made her feel like a stranger. By day 20, Emma's patience snapped. She was reorganizing his filing system, a task he'd assigned with zero explanation, when he walked past her desk without acknowledgement for the 4th time that morning. "Did I do something wrong?" The question came out sharper than intended. Matteo stopped, turned. His expression was carved from ice. "Excuse me? You've been treating me like I'm radioactive for 3 days, so either I did something wrong, or you're just being an ass for fun." Emma stood, her hands clenched at her sides. "Which is it?" Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Careful, Miss Holland." "Or what? You'll fire me? You've been trying to do that since day 1. She stepped around her desk, ignoring the voice in her head screaming to back down. "At least have the decency to tell me why. You want to know why?" Matteo's voice dropped to that lethal quiet. "Because you're a liability I can't afford. Because every moment you're in this office, you're in danger. Because—" He stopped himself, jaw clenching. "Because what?" "Because I can't protect you if I'm distracted by you." The confession hung between them like a live wire. Emma's breath caught. "I didn't ask you to protect me. You didn't have to." Matteo closed the distance in 2 strides, and suddenly he was too close, his presence overwhelming in a way that made her pulse spike. "Do you have any idea what you've walked into? What these people would do to you if they knew—" "Knew what?" His eyes dropped to her mouth, lingered. "That you matter." The words were barely a whisper, but they hit like a gunshot. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. "Matteo. Mr. Castelli." His correction was automatic, but his voice was rough, unsteady. "We maintain professional boundaries. Miss Holland, it's safer that way." "Safer for who?" "For both of us." But he didn't move. Neither did she. They stood in the empty office, the morning sun streaming through the windows, close enough that Emma could see the exhaustion etched into his face, the war being fought behind those dark eyes. "I'm not afraid of you," she said softly. "You should be." "Why? Because you're dangerous? Because you run an empire built on secrets?" Emma lifted her chin. "I've spent 3 weeks watching you, Matteo. I've seen you protect your people. I've seen you exhaust yourself trying to legitimize this business. I've seen the man you're trying to be. You don't know me. Then let me." For one breathless moment, she thought he might. Thought he might close that final distance and finish what they'd started 3 nights ago. Instead, he stepped back, his expression shuddering. "Get back to work, Miss Holland." Emma's chest tightened with frustration and something that felt dangerously close to heartbreak. "Fine." But for the record, pushing me away doesn't make me safer. It just makes us both miserable." She returned to her desk, her hands shaking, and didn't look up when he walked back to his office and closed the door. The morning dragged. Emma threw herself into work with aggressive efficiency, organizing files, answering calls, scheduling meetings, anything to keep her mind off the man brooding 30 feet away. At noon, Mateo's door opened. "I have a meeting downtown. I'll be back by 3. Emma nodded without looking up. Noted. She heard him hesitate, felt his gaze on her, then footsteps retreating toward the private elevator. The moment he was gone, Emma exhaled and dropped her head into her hands. This was unsustainable. The tension, the pull, the constant feeling of standing on the edge of something catastrophic and inevitable. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "The bakery inspector is coming tomorrow. Pray he doesn't look too closely at the walk-in." Emma's stomach dropped. Right. The real world. The debt. The entire reason she'd taken this insane job in the first place. She was halfway through composing a reassuring reply when her desk phone rang. Castelli Global, Mr. Castelli's office. Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice male, smooth, with an accent she couldn't place. Emma Holland. The girl who doesn't know when to quit. Every nerve in her body went on high alert. Who is this? Someone who's been watching you. You're very good at your job, Emma. Efficient, thorough. Mateo must be pleased. Her hand tightened on the receiver. I'm hanging up now. He can't protect you forever, you know. Men like Mateo, they burn through everything they touch, including pretty secretaries who think they're special. The line went dead. Emma sat frozen, her heart pounding, the dial tone buzzing in her ear. She should tell someone. Security. Mateo. Anyone. But the voice's words echoed in her head. Mateo must be pleased. How did they know her name? How did they know she worked directly for him? Emma's gaze drifted to the filing cabinet she'd been reorganizing, the one with personnel files, the one that shouldn't be accessible to anyone outside the office. Unless someone had been inside. She crossed to the cabinet, her hands shaking, and pulled the drawer. Everything looked normal, alphabetical, neat, too neat. Emma had reorganized this exact drawer yesterday, and she'd left a specific stack of folders slightly offset, a habit from her days managing chaotic marketing files, a visual marker to know if anything had been moved. The folders were perfectly aligned now. Someone had been in this office, recently, while she and Mateo had been. The private elevator dinged. Emma's head snapped up, expecting Mateo. Instead, 2 men in dark suits stepped into the reception area. Both wore earpieces. Both had the kind of hard eyes that had seen too much. Miss Holland. The taller one smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Castelli sent us to escort you to his car. Security protocol. Every instinct Emma possessed screamed wrong. I wasn't informed of any protocol change. It's precautionary. There's been a potential threat to the building. The man gestured toward the elevator. Please, Mr. Castelli insisted. Emma's mind raced. Mateo wouldn't send random security without calling first, and he'd taken his personal car downtown, which meant these men weren't his. Of course. Emma smiled, grabbed her phone, and started toward them. Let me just grab my bag. She turned back toward her desk, her thumb already finding Mateo's emergency number in her contacts. But before she could hit send, the second man moved fast and plucked the phone from her hand. No calls, security protocol. The smile was gone now. So was any pretense. Emma's heart slammed against her ribs. The office was empty. The security cameras were monitored remotely, and the private elevator required a keycard she didn't have. She was trapped. Where are you really taking me? The tall man's smile returned, sharp and cold. Somewhere Mr. Vallo can have a conversation with you. About your employer. About the files you've been so carefully organizing. He stepped closer. About where your loyalties really lie. Vallo. The name Mateo had mentioned once, in passing, with the kind of venom reserved for true enemies. Emma backed toward Mateo's office, her mind scrambling for options. I don't know anything. Then you have nothing to worry about. The second man moved to block her path. Emma's back hit Mateo's office door. She reached behind her, found the handle, twisted, locked. Of course it was locked. Mateo locked everything. The tall man sighed. "Miss Holland, this can be easy or difficult. Your choice." Emma's gaze darted around the reception area. Marble floors, glass walls, expensive furniture that was completely useless as a weapon except the decorative sculpture on the side table. Bronze, heavy, probably worth more than her car. She grabbed it with both hands and swung. The tall man ducked, but Emma wasn't aiming for him. She aimed for the floor-to-ceiling window behind him, putting every ounce of desperate strength into the throw. The sculpture hit the glass with a spectacular crash. The window spider-webbed but didn't shatter, reinforced. Of course, but the noise was deafening. Alarms immediately began shrieking through the floor. The second man grabbed her arm. Emma drove her heel down on his instep, remembering every self-defense video she'd watched in her paranoid late-night research spirals. He swore, grip loosening just enough for her to wrench free and run. She didn't make it 3 steps before the tall man caught her, one arm locking around her waist, the other covering her mouth. "Stupid girl." The private elevator dinged again. The doors opened. And Matteo Castelli stepped out, his expression transforming from confusion to volcanic fury in the span of a heartbeat. His eyes found Emma, found the man holding her, and something absolutely lethal settled over his features. "Let her go." His voice was quiet, deadly. "Now." The tall man's grip tightened. "Mr. Castelli, Mr. Vallo would like to discuss." I said, "Let her go." What happened next occurred so fast Emma barely processed it. Matteo moved like violence personified, one moment standing by the elevator, the next driving his fist into the tall man's jaw with enough force to make him release her and stagger back. Emma stumbled. Matteo caught her with one arm, pulling her behind him, his other hand already inside his jacket, where she knew, God help her, she knew he kept a gun. The second man raised his hands. "We're just delivering a message." "You put your hands on her!" Matteo's voice was arctic. "That's not a message, that's a declaration of war." The tall man spat blood, his hand moving toward his own weapon. Matteo was faster. The gun appeared in his hand with practiced ease, aimed with absolute steadiness at the man's chest. "I strongly suggest you reconsider." For a frozen moment, no one moved. The alarms wailed. Emma's heart hammered. Matteo stood between her and 2 armed men like a wall of controlled fury. Then the tall man smiled, blood on his teeth, malice in his eyes. "Mr. Vallo says to tell you, the clock is ticking, and your little bird has already sung everything he needs to know." He tapped his ear. Both men stepped backward into the elevator. The doors closed on his final words. 24 hours, Castelli. Then we come back for what's ours." The elevator descended. Silence crashed down, broken only by the alarms. Matteo didn't lower the gun, didn't move, just stood there. His breathing controlled, his body coiled like a spring about to snap. "Matteo, are you hurt?" His voice was rough, strange. "No, I'm—" He turned, and Emma's breath caught at the raw emotion in his eyes. Fear, fury, something that looked dangerously like desperation. "Did they hurt you?" His free hand came up, fingers gentle against her jaw, tilting her face so he could see. "Emma, did they—" "I'm fine, I'm okay." She covered his hand with hers. "You came back. I got a security alert. The window." He stopped, his gaze dropping to where his fingers touched her skin. "I should never have left you alone. You couldn't have known. I knew Vallo was escalating. I knew you were a target." His thumb brushed her cheekbone, the gesture achingly tender despite the gun still in his other hand. "I knew. And I still—" The moment shattered as the main elevator dinged and his security team flooded the floor, 6 men, all armed, all moving with military precision. Matteo's mask slammed back into place. He lowered the gun, stepped back from Emma, and became the cold, dangerous boss again in the space of a heartbeat. "Lock down this floor." I want every camera feed from the last hour. And get Marco on the phone, now." The team scattered. Emma stood in the middle of the chaos, her heart still racing, her skin still burning where he'd touched her. Matteo turned to her, and his eyes held 1,000 words he wasn't saying. Instead, he said, "Get your things. You're coming with me." "Where?" "Somewhere safe." His voice left no room for argument. "Somewhere I can." He stopped himself. "Just get your things, Emma. Please." It was the please that did it. The crack in his armor. Emma nodded and grabbed her bag with shaking hands. Matteo made 3 phone calls in rapid Italian, his voice low and vicious. Then he was guiding her toward the elevator with a hand on her lower back, protective, possessive, burning through the fabric of her blazer. The elevator doors closed, sealing them in. The moment they were alone, Matteo's control visibly frayed, his hand clenched at his side. His jaw was so tight Emma thought it might crack. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. His eyes snapped to hers. "For what? For throwing a $60,000 sculpture through your window?" The laugh that escaped him was sharp, disbelieving. Then he was moving, crowding her back against the elevator wall, his hands bracketing her face, his forehead dropping to rest against hers. Emma. Her name was a rough exhale. If anyone ever touches you again, I know." "No, you don't." He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, and what she saw there stole her breath. "I will burn down everything. Do you understand? I will start a war that doesn't end until—" The elevator lurched to a stop. Matteo's hand immediately went to his weapon. His body shifted, placing himself between Emma and the doors. They opened onto the parking garage, empty except for Matteo's car and a small, unmarked box sitting on the hood. Matteo went very, very still. Emma's blood turned to ice. "What is that?" He didn't answer. Just pulled his phone, snapped a photo, and sent it to someone. Seconds later, his phone buzzed with a reply. Whatever he read made his face drain of color. "Matteo?" He looked at her, and Emma saw something she'd never seen before in Matteo Castelli's eyes. Genuine fear. "Get in the car. Don't touch anything. And Emma," his voice cracked, "whatever happens next, I need you to know I never meant for—" His phone rang. He answered, listened, and went impossibly paler. "When?" Pause. "How long do we have?" Another pause. Then quietly, "I understand." He hung up, looked at Emma, and said the 5 words that shattered everything. "They have your mother's bakery." The box on the hood, Emma would learn later, contained the original signed contract for her family's debt torn in half, just like in Chapter 4's cliffhanger. But it also contained something else. A photograph. Not of Emma and her mother at the bakery. Of Emma and Matteo, standing in his office 3 nights ago, frozen in the moment before their almost kiss, taken through the window. From across the street. And written across the bottom in red ink, 24 hours, the vault blueprint, or we take the bakery and everyone in it. Emma's mother answered on the 3rd ring, breathless and cheerful. "Sweetheart, perfect timing. I just pulled the sourdough from—" "Mom." Emma's voice cracked. "I need you to close the bakery. Right now." Silence. Then, "Emma? What's wrong? Please, just lock the doors. Don't let anyone in. I'll explain later. But please. You're scaring me." "Good. Be scared. And call me the second you're locked inside with the shutters down." She hung up before her mother could argue, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Matteo was on his own call, rapid Italian, punctuated by barely controlled fury. He'd driven them to a nondescript office building 20 minutes from Castelli Global, somewhere he called the secondary location, which Emma suspected was mob speak for the place we go when someone declares war. The office was sparse, clinical, a desk, 2 chairs, reinforced windows, and enough visible security measures to make Emma's stomach churn. Matteo ended his call and immediately made another, and another. His consigliere, his head of security, someone named Adriano who apparently controlled the perimeter. Emma stood by the window watching the street below, her mind spinning through worst-case scenarios at dizzying speed. 24 hours. They had 24 hours before Valo made good on his threat. Her mother. The bakery. The employees who depended on that tiny shop for their livelihoods. All of it leveraged against a blueprint Emma didn't even know existed until 3 hours ago. She's secure. Matteo's voice cut through her spiral. 3 of my men are posted outside the bakery. Valo won't touch her. Emma turned. You're sure? I'm sure. But his expression was grim. For now. What does he want with this blueprint? What's so important that he'd... It's not about what's in the vault. Matteo loosened his tie with sharp, agitated movements. It's about proving he can make me bend. About demonstrating that I'm vulnerable. His eyes found hers. That you make me vulnerable. The words landed like a punch. Then give it to him. What? The blueprint. Give it to him. Emma crossed to where he stood. Whatever's in that vault isn't worth my mother's life. It's not worth... It's evidence. Matteo's jaw clenched. Evidence that could dismantle everything my family built. Records, transactions, names of every person in the organization. He paused. Including the ones I'm trying to protect by legitimizing this operation. Understanding crashed over Emma. You're trying to get out. I'm trying to end this without burning down everyone in the process. Matteo's voice was rough. The vault holds the keys to doing that cleanly. If Valo gets that information, he'll use it to destroy people who were just following orders. Good people. And if he doesn't get it, he destroys my family. The silence between them was heavy, impossible. Matteo turned away, his hand dragging through his hair. I have a team working on extracting your mother. Once she's somewhere safe, she'll never leave the bakery. That place is her whole life. Then I'll make her leave. Matteo. This is not a negotiation, Emma. His voice cracked with barely leashed fury. I am not letting Valo use your family as a bargaining chip. I am not... He stopped, his shoulders rigid. Emma moved closer. Not what? I'm not letting him take anything else from me. The admission was quiet. Devastated. She wanted to touch him, wanted to close the distance and offer comfort she wasn't sure she had the right to give. Instead, she said, This isn't your fault, isn't it? Matteo turned, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole her breath. I knew Valo was targeting you. I knew the loan was bait, and I still let you stay because I was... He stopped himself. Because you were what? Selfish. The word was self-loathing. I wanted you here, in my office, in my life, and now you're paying the price for my weakness. Emma's heart twisted. I chose to stay. You chose based on lies, on a debt that was manufactured to trap you. If I'd been honest from the start, I still would have stayed. Matteo stared at her. Why? Because I'm falling for you, Emma thought. Because somewhere between the coffee spills and the late nights and the moments you let your guard down, I stopped seeing the dangerous boss and started seeing the man. But she couldn't say that. Not now, not when everything was crashing down around them. Because someone needs to organize your disaster of a filing system, she said instead, aiming for levity. Matteo didn't laugh. Emma, listen to me. She stepped closer, close enough to see the exhaustion carved into his features. We have 24 hours, so let's use them. You're brilliant. I'm apparently good at accidentally uncovering conspiracies. Together, we figure out a way to get that evidence to the right people and keep Valo from getting his hands on it. There is no right people in my world. Then we make new people. Emma held his gaze. Or we accept that some things are worth fighting for, even if the odds are terrible. For a long moment, Matteo just looked at her. Then he reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away and cupped her face with one hand. You terrify me, he said softly. Your optimism, your resilience. The way you make me believe things could be different. Emma's breath hitched. Is that bad? It's dangerous. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. Because now I have something to lose. The moment stretched between them, fragile and electric. Emma's heart hammered. Matteo's gaze dropped to her mouth. Then his phone shattered the silence. He pulled back, answering with a clipped, "Castelli." Emma watched his expression transform confusion, then fury, then something that looked like genuine shock. "When?" Pause. "How many?" Another pause. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. He hung up, looked at Emma, and said, "Valo just hit our downtown holding facility. He's not after the vault blueprint." "Then what?" "He already has it." Emma's world tilted. "That's impossible." "You said." "I said it was in the vault. I never said which vault." Matteo was already moving, grabbing his jacket, checking his weapon. "There are 3. Downtown was secondary security for financial records and backups. Including the blueprint. Including everything." Matteo's voice was ice. "Which means the entire ultimatum, the bakery, the 24 hours. All of it was a distraction." "A distraction from what?" "From the fact that he's been inside my operation for weeks, maybe months." Matteo pulled out his phone, his fingers moving rapidly across the screen. "Someone's been feeding him information, security codes, access schedules, personnel files." Emma's stomach dropped. "Matteo, not now." He was pulling up security feeds, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. "I need to see who accessed the downtown vault in the last 72 hours. Emma moved to stand beside him, watching the footage flicker past. She'd gotten good at reading Castelli Global's security systems over the past 3 weeks, good enough to notice patterns, good enough to see. "Stop," her voice was sharp. "Go back." Matteo rewound the footage. There, a figure entering the vault room at 2:47 a.m., 2 nights ago. The timestamp made Emma's blood run cold. The night of the security breach. The night she and Matteo had almost— "That's the night of the alarm," she whispered. "The false alarm." Matteo's voice was deadly quiet, which means it wasn't false, it was cover. The figure on the screen turned, and the camera caught his face for just a moment. Marco Salviati, Matteo's consigliere. Emma felt the air leave the room. Matteo went very, very still. "No." "Matteo." "No." He was already dialing, his movements sharp and violent. "Marco's been with my family for 20 years. He's loyal, he's—" The call went to voicemail. Matteo tried again. Voicemail. On the 3rd attempt, someone answered, but it wasn't Marco. "Mr. Castelli." Valo's voice was smooth, triumphant. "I believe you're missing someone. Would you like to know where to find him?" Matteo's hand clenched around the phone. "If you've touched him?" "Oh, I haven't touched anyone." Marco came willingly. "Turns out loyalty has a price after all. And you, my friend, stopped paying it years ago when you decided to dismantle the very empire he helped build." Emma watched Matteo's face drain of color. "What do you want?" His voice was hollow. "The same thing I've always wanted. Control. Respect. And you broken." Valo's laugh was cold. 24 hours. "Matteo, give me the second vault location, or Marco tells me everything he knows. And trust me, he knows where all the bodies are buried. Literally." The line went dead. Matteo stood frozen, the phone still pressed to his ear, his entire world visibly crumbling. Emma reached for him. "Matteo, get out." "What?" "Get out, Emma, go home, forget you ever worked here." His voice was empty, mechanical. "The challenge is over. You win. I'll wire you the 50,000 tonight. I'm not leaving." "Yes, you are." He finally looked at her, and the devastation in his eyes nearly broke her. "Because I can't protect you from this. I can't protect anyone. I built this entire operation on trust, and the one man I thought would never betray me just sold me to my worst enemy. Then we fix it. There is no fixing this." The explosion came from somewhere deep, somewhere raw. "Don't you understand? Valo has the blueprint. He has Marco. He has leverage on every move I make. And he has you because the second I admitted you mattered, I painted a target on your back so big I might as well have pulled the trigger myself." Emma's heart cracked. "That's not—" "Go home, Emma." Matteo turned away, his shoulders rigid. "This is my world." My war. My consequences. I never should have dragged you into it. You didn't drag me. I walked in on my own. Then walk out. His voice was quiet. Final. Before I lose what's left of my humanity trying to keep you alive. Emma stood there, tears burning her eyes, her heart screaming to stay and fight. But the set of Mateo's shoulders, the careful distance he'd created, the wall slamming back into place, he was pushing her away to protect her. And she was terrified it might be the last time she saw him alive. Okay, she whispered. I'll go. Mateo didn't turn around, didn't respond. Emma grabbed her bag, walked to the door, and paused with her hand on the handle. For what it's worth, she said softly, you didn't lose your humanity. You never had anything to lose. It was always there. You just needed someone to see it. She left before he could respond. Emma didn't go home. She went to the 24th floor records and archives at Castelli Global and used her badge to slip inside at 11 p.m. If Mateo wouldn't fight for himself, she'd fight for him. The H section, the Holland file, the Valo Capital connection she'd found weeks ago. But this time, Emma kept digging. Every loan Valo had issued in the past year, every business he'd targeted, every desperate family he'd leveraged into his web of control. She photographed everything. And then she found something else. A personnel file that shouldn't have been in this cabinet. A transfer request dated 3 months ago, signed by Marco Salviati, requesting Emma Holland specifically for Mateo's secretarial position. Before she'd even applied, Emma's hands trembled as she photographed the document. Marco hadn't just betrayed Mateo, he'd orchestrated Emma's entire employment from the start. She was still staring at the evidence when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, multiple sets. Emma's blood turned to ice. The archives door opened, and standing in the doorway, backlit by the harsh hallway fluorescence, was Matteo Castelli. His arms were crossed. His expression was absolutely murderous. "What?" he said, his voice dangerously soft. "Have you done, Emma?" Emma's first instinct was to lie. Her second was to run. She went with option 3, defiance delivered with a trembling voice and a USB drive clutched in her sweaty palm. "I'm saving your life, actually." Mateo's expression didn't change. He stepped into the archives, 2 security guards filing in behind him. "Give me the drive, Emma." "No. That wasn't a request. And I'm not an employee anymore, remember? You fired me." Emma lifted her chin. "You told me to go home. I'm just taking the scenic route." "By breaking into a restricted floor and copying confidential files?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "That's corporate espionage. So arrest me, or hear me out first." Mateo made a sharp gesture. His security team stepped into the hallway, closing the door. They were alone. "You have 60 seconds, Mateo said. "Talk." Emma pulled up the photograph of Marco's transfer request. "This was filed 3 months ago, before I ever applied. Before my family's loan went into default. Marco specifically requested me for your position." Mateo's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. "He didn't just betray you, he set this entire thing in motion. The loan, my employment, everything." Emma's voice cracked. "I'm not Valo's accidental mole. I'm his deliberate plant." "I know." The words hit like a slap. Emma stared at him. You knew?" "I figured it out 3 hours ago." Mateo's expression was stone, "which is why I told you to leave. Because the safest thing is for you to be far from this before Valo decides you're more valuable as leverage than as an asset." "Then why are you here?" "Because my head of security called and said someone was copying files they shouldn't have access to." Mateo crossed his arms. "And I knew it would be you, doing something reckless and brave and completely inadvisable. I was trying to help. By making yourself a target?" His control was fraying. "Do you have any idea what Valo will do if he finds out you've been digging into his operations? The same thing he'll do to you if you give him what he wants. I can handle Valo." "Not alone, you can't." Mateo moved forward, caging her against the filing cabinet, his hands braced on either side of her. "You don't get to risk yourself for me." "Why not? You've been doing it for me since day one." That's different. How? Because you're supposed to be safe, Emma. You're supposed to walk away with your 50,000 and no blood on your hands. His eyes searched hers. You're supposed to be untouched by my world. I stopped being untouched the moment I stayed when you told me to leave. Emma held his gaze. The moment I realized I'd rather fight with you than be safe without you. Matteo's breath caught. Emma, I found something else. She showed him the screen. Valo's acquisition targets for the next 6 months. Marco was copying him on everything, including your remaining vault locations. Matteo grabbed her phone, scanning with sharp focus, his face drained of color. This is tonight. Valo's hitting the primary vault tonight. Can you stop him? Not if he has Marco's codes. He was already dialing. I have approximately 4 hours to lock down the vault and extract anything critical. Then, let's go. Matteo looked at her like she'd suggested they rob a bank. There is no let's, Emma. You're going to a safe house. No. Emma straightened. You need someone who knows your filing systems, someone who can identify which documents are critical. You need me. Matteo, what I need is for you to be alive when this is finished. Then make sure we both survive. She reached up, her hand finding his jaw. Together. Matteo closed his eyes, fighting himself. Then he opened them, fury and resignation warring in his gaze. If anything happens to you, I will never forgive myself. Then we make sure nothing happens. Emma tried to smile. I've made it to day 29 without breaking anything irreplaceable. Matteo's hand covered hers. You are irreplaceable. Then he stepped back, mask in place. We have 4 hours. Don't make me regret this. The primary vault was 3 sub-levels below the parking garage, behind a door requiring biometric access and a 16-digit code. The space was the size of a small warehouse, lined with filing cabinets and a massive central safe. 20 years of my family's history. Matteo was already unlocking cabinets. We take priority. 1 documents financial records, contracts, anything with names. Everything else stays. They worked in tense silence. An hour passed. Then 2. Emma was sorting a cabinet marked acquisitions when she found it. A folder labeled Holland Family Trust Estate Documents. Inside were legal documents dated 30 years ago, her grandfather's signature, and next to it, Giuseppe Castelli, Matteo's father. My grandfather worked for your family, she whispered. Matteo crossed to her, expression grim. Your grandfather was my father's consigliere before Marco, one of the few men he trusted completely. Why didn't you tell me? Because your grandfather spent his final years trying to give your family a clean life. He made my father promise your family would never be pulled into this business. Matteo's voice was quiet. I've been honoring that promise. Until Valo forced your hand. Until I let myself want something I had no right to want. His gaze held hers. You. Emma's breath hitched. Matteo. The vault's alarm blared to life. Matteo grabbed Emma, pulling her behind him as he drew his weapon. He's early. How is he? The vault door exploded inward. Smoke filled the space. When it cleared, 5 men stood in the destroyed doorway. At the center, smiling, was Leonardo Valo. Beside him, looking broken, stood Marco Salviati. I'm sorry, Marco said quietly. I truly am. Matteo's weapon stayed trained on Valo. Get behind me, Emma. Valo's gaze found her. His smile widened. Ah, the famous Emma Holland. Did you know your grandfather once saved my father's life? Old family debts, funny things, aren't they? She has nothing to do with this, Matteo said, voice lethal. On the contrary, she has everything to do with this. Valo gestured, his men flanking them. You give me the access protocols. You walk away. And maybe I let Emma live, refuse. And she discovers exactly how brutal this world can be. Emma felt Matteo's impossible choice. Or, Emma said surprisingly steady, option 3. Both men looked at her. Emma pulled the USB drive from her pocket. I copied everything. Every target. Every illegal acquisition. Every person you've destroyed. She held it up. You want the vault? Fine. But this goes to the FBI. Interpol, every news outlet I can find. Your empire burns either way. Valo's smile vanished. Mateo's hand found Emma's, squeezed once pride and terror and love. Clever girl, Valo said softly. But stupid. His phone rang. He answered, listened. His expression transformed to fury. When? Pause. How many agents? He hung up, looked at Mateo, laughed, sharp, humorless. It seems your secretary made a call before coming here. The FBI is raiding my offices. Valo's voice was ice. You've started a war you can't win. He gestured. Kill them both. The vault erupted into chaos. Mateo fired precise shots, dropping the two closest men. Emma hit the ground, Mateo covering her as bullets sparked off metal cabinets. Marco moved not toward Valo, but toward Mateo, weapon drawn but not aimed. Go! Marco shouted over the gunfire. Back exit northwest corner, code is your mother's birthday. Valo's shot caught him in the chest. Marco went down. No! Mateo's cry was anguished, but Emma was already pulling him toward the exit, their feet slipping on scattered documents. They made it to the door. Mateo punched in the code with shaking fingers, the lock disengaged. Behind them, Valo screamed, You can run, Castelli, but I own this city, I will find her. The door slammed shut. Mateo and Emma ran. The emergency tunnel smelled like concrete and old fear. Emma's lungs burned as they ran, Mateo's hand ironed tight around hers, pulling her through darkness lit only by emergency strips every 20 feet. Behind them, the vault door's alarm still shrieked, distant now, but not distant enough. Where does this lead? Emma gasped. Parking structure, 2 blocks east. Mateo's voice was clipped, controlled despite the chaos. We have maybe 3 minutes before Valo's men figure out the exit points. Marco is dead. The words were flat, final, but Emma heard the fracture beneath them. They burst through a reinforced door into cold night air. The parking structure was industrial, half abandoned, the kind of place that looked like it housed more crimes than cars. Mateo's phone buzzed. He answered without slowing. Adriano, status. Emma couldn't hear the response, but she watched Mateo's expression shift surprise, then something harder. How many? Pause. FBI? Emma, what did you... He stopped himself, jaw clenching. Get everyone to the secondary perimeter. Yes, all of them. I don't care about protocol move now. He hung up, looked at Emma with an expression caught between fury and something that looked dangerously close to awe. You called the FBI. I texted a tip line before we went to the vault. Anonymous. Emma's chin lifted. I figured if Valo was going to start a war, he should fight it on 2 fronts. That was... Mateo stopped, started again. Incredibly reckless, but effective. Devastatingly so. They're raiding 4 of his properties simultaneously. His entire operation is hemorrhaging. Mateo pulled her toward a black SUV, which means he has nothing left to lose. And desperate men make catastrophic decisions. He opened the passenger door. Emma climbed in, her hands still shaking from adrenaline. Mateo slid into the driver's seat, engine roaring to life. Where are we going? Castelli Global. I need to secure the remaining files before Valo torches the building? Emma's voice was sharper than intended. That's exactly where he'll expect us to go. Which is why we're not staying. Mateo pulled onto the street, his driving precise despite the speed. We extract what matters and disappear until the FBI finishes what you started. Emma watched the city blur past. I'm sorry about Marco. Mateo's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. He made his choice. He tried to save us at the end, after betraying me for months. The words were ice, after orchestrating your employment. After feeding Valo everything he needed to destroy. Mateo stopped, jaw clenched so tight Emma thought it might crack. She reached over, her hand covering his on the gear shift. Mateo, I trusted him. The confession was raw. 20 years, Emma. He was at my father's funeral. He helped me take over when I was barely old enough to understand what I was inheriting. And he sold me out the moment I tried to do something decent. Why? Because decent doesn't exist in this world. Because the moment I started legitimizing operations, closing down the illegal channels, trying to build something clean, I became a threat to everyone who profits from the darkness. Matteo's voice cracked. Marco didn't betray me for money. He betrayed me because I was dismantling everything he helped build. I was killing his legacy. Emma's chest tightened. You were saving it. Tell that to the man bleeding out in a vault because I wasn't ruthless enough to see the knife coming. They drove in heavy silence. Emma's mind raced Marco's betrayal, Valo's desperation, the FBI raids, the vault documents now scattered across concrete floors. And beneath it all, one terrifying truth. This was far from over. Castelli Global emerged from the darkness like a sleeping giant. Most windows were dark, but Matteo's executive floor blazed with light. That's wrong. Matteo killed the engine 3 blocks away. Building should be on minimal power. Maybe security activated full lighting after the vault breach? Or someone's already inside. He pulled his weapon, checking the magazine with practiced efficiency. Stay in the car. Absolutely not. Emma, we're not splitting up. Not after... She gestured vaguely at the night they'd just survived. Not after everything. Matteo stared at her, fighting himself. Then he pulled a second weapon from the glove box, smaller, compact, and held it out. Do you know how to use this? Emma took it, the weight foreign and terrifying in her palm. Point and shoot? Safety's here. Trigger pull is heavy. Don't aim unless you intend to fire. His eyes held hers. And if something happens to me, nothing's happening to you. Emma. No. Her voice was firm. We survive together or not at all. Those are the only options. Something shifted in Matteo's expression, resignation, mixed with reluctant affection. You're going to get us both killed. Or, we're going to save each other. Emma checked the safety like he'd shown her. Either way, it'll be memorable. They approached from the service entrance. Matteo's security badge worked, which meant the building's systems were still active. The elevator required a code. Matteo hesitated, then punched in numbers. The doors opened. If this goes wrong, he said quietly as they stepped inside, if Valo's men are up there, then we improvise. I'm excellent at improvising. Emma tried to smile. Remember the sculpture incident? You mean when you nearly gave me a heart attack on your first day? And yet here you are, still breathing. The elevator climbed. 40 floors. 45. Matteo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, expression darkening. What? Adriano. 3 of Valo's men just entered the parking garage. Matteo's voice was deadly calm. We have maybe 2 minutes before they reach this floor. The elevator dinged. 47th floor. The doors opened onto chaos. Papers scattered everywhere, desks overturned, and standing in the center of Matteo's office, surrounded by 4 armed men, was a figure Emma recognized from security photos. Leonardo Valo. In person. This time. He turned and his smile was genuine, delighted, even. Matteo. Emma. So glad you could join us. He gestured to the destruction. I was just redecorating, hope you don't mind. Matteo's weapon was already raised. Get away from my desk. Or what? You'll shoot me in your own office? With FBI likely monitoring this building after those anonymous tips? Valo's laugh was cold. You're smarter than that. He's bleeding. Emma's voice was quiet. Certain. Everyone looked at her. She pointed to Valo's left side, where his jacket hung oddly. You're favoring your right side. Your breathing's shallow. Someone shot you during the FBI raid. Valo's smile vanished. Clever girl. Which means you're desperate. You came here knowing it's a trap because you need something in this office before the FBI seizes everything. Emma stepped forward, ignoring Matteo's sharp intake of breath. What is it? Emma, don't, Matteo warned. He's going to tell us anyway. That's why he's here instead of running. He needs leverage. She met Valo's eyes. What's in Matteo's office that's worth dying for? Valo studied her with newfound respect. Then he pulled something from his pocket. An antique watch, silver, engraved. Emma's heart stopped. That's my grandfather's. Indeed. Given to him by Giuseppe Castelli for 20 years of loyal service. Vallo turned it over, revealing an inscription. It's also the access key to the original Castelli vault, the one containing the real legacy, not financial records, but names. Connections. Every family that ever did business with the Castellis, including mine. Understanding crashed over Emma. You need to destroy the evidence before the FBI finds it. Or retrieve it and disappear. Vallo's gun appeared, aimed at Matteo. The watch doesn't work without the biometric scan. Castelli blood on Castelli property. So, here's the deal. Matteo opens the vault, I take what's mine, and maybe I let you both live. Matteo's weapon didn't waver. You're not leaving this building. Then, neither are you. Vallo cocked his weapon. Because the moment I die, my men scattered throughout this building execute everyone your security, the cleaning crew, that lovely night receptionist. 23 people. Matteo, can you live with that? The silence stretched, terrible and complete. Then, the fire alarm exploded to life. Not the normal alarm, the emergency override, the kind used for active threats. Vallo's men immediately turned toward the stairwell doors, and in that split second of distraction, everything happened at once. Matteo fired precise shots that dropped 2 of Vallo's guards. Emma dove behind her desk, heart hammering. Vallo's remaining men returned fire, the office erupting into chaos, glass shattering, bullets sparking off metal. The rooftop! Matteo's voice cut through the noise. Emma, northeast stairwell, go! She ran, Matteo covering her retreat with controlled, devastating efficiency. Behind them, Vallo screamed orders, his voice raw with fury and pain. They hit the stairwell at full speed. Up, always up. 48th floor, 49th. Rooftop access. Matteo kicked the door open, and cold wind slammed into them. The helipad stretched before them, empty except for a helicopter. Engine running. Rotors beginning to spin. Standing beside it was Adriano, Matteo's head of security, frantically waving them forward. They sprinted across the rooftop. 50 feet. 30. The stairwell door exploded open behind them. Vallo emerged, surrounded by his remaining men, weapon raised. Emma's lungs burned. 20 feet to the helicopter. A gunshot cracked. The concrete at Emma's feet sparked. Matteo grabbed her, pulling her behind him, his body a shield. Another shot, this one caught the helicopter's tail rotor. Sparks flew. We can't take off, Adriano shouted over the wind. We're compromised. They were trapped, pinned between Vallo's guns and a disabled helicopter. Emma's mind raced. The rooftop maintenance shed, the emergency antenna array, the loose cable she'd noticed once while admiring the view from Matteo's office window. Without thinking, she grabbed Matteo's arm. The antenna northwest corner, there's a wire hanging loose. If we can create a distraction, that's insane. So was everything else tonight. Emma pulled the weapon he'd given her, aimed at the antenna base, and fired. The recoil shocked her. The shot went wide but close enough. The antenna sparked. The wire whipped in the wind, striking a maintenance junction box. The explosion wasn't large. But it was bright. Blinding. Vallo's men instinctively turned away, covering their eyes. Matteo moved like violence given form. 3 shots, 3 targets down. He grabbed Emma, pulling her toward the helicopter. You brilliant. Reckless. The shot came from nowhere. Matteo stumbled. Emma caught him. Blood. Dark, and spreading across his shoulder. No, no, no! Emma's hands pressed against the wound. Matteo's face was pale, but his eyes were clear. Focused. Get in the helicopter! Not without Emma. His hand found her face. Please. Vallo was advancing, weapon raised, smile triumphant, touching. Really. But this ends now. The rooftop flooded with light. FBI helicopters. 3 of them. Surrounding the building. A voice boomed through a loudspeaker. Leonardo Vallo, you're surrounded. Drop your weapon. Vallo's expression transformed to pure rage. He aimed at Emma. Matteo threw himself forward, tackling her to the ground as the shot went wide. They fell together, Matteo's body covering hers, his blood warm against her hands. FBI tactical teams swarmed the rooftop. Vallo was subdued within seconds, still screaming, still fighting. Emma pulled Matteo into her lap, his blood soaking through her clothes. "Stay with me. Please stay with me." "Always so dramatic," Matteo whispered, his smile weak. "I'm fine, shoulder wound. I've had worse." "You're bleeding everywhere." "Emma." His hand found hers. "You called the FBI. You saved." He stopped, eyes widening as he looked past her. Emma turned. Standing at the rooftop entrance, bathed in the harsh light of FBI helicopters and surrounded by agents, was a figure she'd only seen in Matteo's private family photos. A woman, late 50s, elegant even in tactical gear, with Matteo's eyes and a presence that commanded absolute attention. "Mama?" Matteo's voice was confused, disbelieving. The woman crossed the rooftop with purposeful strides, FBI agents parting for her like water. She knelt beside Matteo, her hand checking his wound with professional efficiency. Then she looked at Emma, and her smile was warm, knowing. "You must be Emma Holland, the secretary who just dismantled the Vallo operation and saved my son's life." She extended her hand. "I'm Isabella Castelli, FBI special agent, and we need to talk." Emma's world had officially stopped making sense. Matteo's mother was FBI. His mother, the woman in the elegant funeral photos, the one he'd mentioned exactly twice in hushed, grief-stricken tones, was alive, federal, and currently barking orders at tactical teams like she commanded them. Which, apparently, she did. "Secure Vallo. I want him in federal custody within the hour. Medic, this man needs immediate attention." Isabella's hand pressed firmly against Matteo's shoulder wound. "And someone get me a status report on the vault breach." Matteo stared at her like she was a ghost. "You're dead. I buried you. I gave a eulogy. You buried an empty casket, Tesoro. Necessary cover for deep infiltration." Isabella's voice softened fractionally. "I'm sorry you had to believe that. But it was the only way to get close to Vallo's network without compromising you." 5 years. Matteo's voice cracked. "I mourned you for 5 years. And I spent 5 years building a case that just collapsed tonight because your brilliant secretary." Isabella's gaze shifted to Emma, sharp and assessing. "Called in anonymous tips that triggered raids across 4 states simultaneously." Emma's stomach dropped. I didn't mean to ruin." "Ruin?" Isabella laughed, the sound surprisingly warm. "You accelerated our timeline by 6 months and forced Vallo into desperate mistakes. That rooftop confrontation, that's admissible evidence. Attempted murder of a federal informant." "Federal informant?" Emma looked at Matteo. "You were working with the FBI?" "No." Matteo's expression was unreadable. "She means you." The rooftop tilted slightly. "The moment you sent those texts, you became a confidential source." Isabella stood, gesturing for the medics. "Which means you're under federal protection until this case closes." "Both of you are." Paramedics swarmed Matteo. He tried to wave them off, but Isabella's glare could have frozen lava. "Let them work, Matteo. You've been shot. Stop being stubborn." "I learned from the best," he muttered, but allowed them to cut away his jacket. Emma watched, her hands still shaking, still covered in his blood. Everything felt surreal. The FBI helicopters, the agents securing Vallo, the impossible revelation that Matteo's mother had orchestrated this entire endgame. Isabella moved beside her, voice lowering. "How much do you know about my son's operation?" "Enough to know he's been trying to legitimize it, to end it without starting a war." Emma met her eyes. "Enough to know he's a good man in an impossible situation." Something shifted in Isabella's expression. "And how much does he know about you?" "What do you mean?" "Your grandfather, Emma. Antonio Holland." Isabella pulled out a tablet, showing Emma a photograph her grandfather, younger, standing beside a man she now recognized as Giuseppe Castelli. "He wasn't just consigliere. He was my husband's closest friend, and before he died, he made Giuseppe promise something." Emma's heart hammered. What promise? That if his family ever needed protection, the Castellis would provide it. No questions asked. Isabella's gaze was penetrating. Your family's debt wasn't random, and it wasn't Valo's first move. It was the trigger for a protection protocol your grandfather established 30 years ago. The world tilted again. You're saying, I'm saying your employment wasn't Valo's plan alone. Marco activated the protection protocol when he saw Valo targeting your family. He requested you specifically because Matteo was the only person Giuseppe trusted with that promise. Isabella's voice softened. Marco betrayed my son's business, but he honored your grandfather's legacy. It's why he died protecting you both. Emma's eyes burned. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because the moment you knew, you became complicit. You lost the legal protection of ignorance. Isabella gestured to the chaos around them. But tonight changed everything. You acted independently, heroically. And now the law can actually protect you instead of prosecute you. Matteo was being loaded onto a stretcher, arguing with every paramedic in Italian. He looked furious, exhausted, and somehow still in control despite bleeding and horizontal. Isabella smiled. He gets that from me. The stubbornness or the control issues? Both. She turned fully to Emma. I need to know something. And I need you to be honest. Okay. Do you love my son? The question landed like a physical blow. Emma opened her mouth, closed it. Every deflection, every joke, every defense mechanism she'd built over 29 days crumbled. Yes, she whispered. God help me, yes. Isabella studied her for a long moment, then nodded, satisfied. Good, because he's going to need someone brave enough to love him when this is over, someone who sees the man, not the empire. She started to walk away, then paused. Oh, and Emma? The $50,000. Consider it paid. You lasted all 30 days. Technically, you earned it the moment you survived tonight. Emma watched her go, her mind spinning with revelations, exhaustion, and the impossible reality that she'd just confessed her feelings to an FBI agent who happened to be her boss's supposedly dead mother. This was, without question, the strangest job interview follow-up in human history. Matteo was loaded into a medical helicopter. Emma climbed in beside him, refusing every agent's suggestion that she take a separate transport. I'm not leaving him, she said firmly. Arrest me if you have to. No one arrested her. The helicopter lifted off, the city spreading below them glittering, chaotic, oblivious to the war that had just ended on a corporate rooftop. Matteo's hand found hers. Emma, don't talk. You're bleeding. I'm always bleeding. Occupational hazard. His smile was weak. My mother is apparently a federal agent with impeccable timing and terrifying organizational skills. I see where you get it. She let me think she was dead. She was protecting you and building a case. Emma squeezed his hand. Are you angry? I don't know what I am. Matteo's eyes closed briefly. 5 years, Emma. 5 years of grief, of trying to honor her memory by fixing everything she hated about our family business. And she was alive the entire time, watching me dismantle the empire she was investigating. She's proud of you, I could see it. She has a strange way of showing it. The medical bay at the federal facility was sterile, efficient. Doctors worked on Matteo's shoulder while Emma sat in the hallway, wrapped in a shock blanket someone had draped over her shoulders. Isabella appeared with 2 cups of terrible coffee. She handed one to Emma. He'll be fine, clean through and through. No major damage. She sat beside Emma. You did well tonight. I mostly just broke things and caused chaos. Welcome to undercover work. Isabella sipped her coffee, grimacing. Federal facilities make terrible coffee. Remember that if you ever consider this career path. Emma nearly laughed. Nearly. Why are you telling me all this? The protection protocol, my grandfather. Everything. Isn't that classified? You're going to marry my son eventually. You might as well know the family secrets now. Emma choked on her coffee. We're not, that's not. Emma, I've been watching Matteo for 5 years through surveillance feeds. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Isabella's smile was knowing, and I've definitely never seen him take a bullet for someone while simultaneously looking annoyed that they made him do it. That's just love. Inconvenient, dangerous, completely inadvisable love. Isabella stood. Which, in this family, is the only kind worth having. She walked away, leaving Emma alone with terrible coffee and the terrifying certainty that everything had changed. The vault, the evidence, the war, the revelations, and somewhere in a medical bay, a mafia boss who'd chosen to protect her instead of his empire. Day 29 was over. But the real challenge surviving what came next was just beginning. 3 weeks later, Emma stood in Matteo's penthouse, the one he'd moved them to after the FBI cleared them both, staring at a briefcase containing $50,000 in cash. It sat on the marble kitchen counter like an accusation. Matteo emerged from the bedroom, his shoulder still bandaged but healing. He'd traded his suits for casual clothes, dark jeans, a Henley that showed the edge of his chest tattoo. He looked softer, more human, still devastating. "You haven't touched it," he observed. "I'm working up to it." Emma crossed her arms. 30 days. I survived 30 days. Technically, I won the bet. You did more than survive. You dismantled a criminal empire and saved my life multiple times. Matteo moved closer, his presence still electric despite everything. "Take the money, Emma. You earned it." And then what? The question hung between them. 3 weeks of recovery? 3 weeks of FBI interviews, witness protection discussions, legal proceedings? 3 weeks of living in the same space, orbiting each other carefully, neither brave enough to address what had happened on that rooftop. "Then you go home," Matteo said quietly. "You save your family's bakery. You live the life you were supposed to have before I dragged you into mine." Emma's chest tightened. "Is that what you want?" "What I want is irrelevant. You deserve normal, Emma. Safe, clean." His voice was rough. "Everything I'm not." "That's convenient." Matteo's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? You get to play the noble martyr, pushing me away for my own good. Very romantic, very self-sacrificing." Emma stepped closer. "Also, very cowardly." "Cowardly?" His voice dropped to that dangerous quiet. "I took a bullet for you. And now you're too scared to ask me to stay." Matteo went very still. "Emma, do you love me?" The question came out steadier than she felt. "Because I need to know. Before I take that money and walk away, I need to know if I'm the only one feeling this." The silence stretched, terrible and complete. Then Matteo moved, closing the distance, his hands framing her face with devastating gentleness. "I fell for you the moment you caught that Ming vase and looked at me like I was the dangerous thing in the room, not the priceless artifact." His voice cracked. "I fell for you every time you made me laugh despite myself. Every time you saw the man instead of the monster. Every time you stayed when anyone sane would have run." Emma's breath caught. "Then why?" "Because I have nothing to offer you. My business is legitimate now, but the FBI seized half my assets. My mother is living proof my family lies about everything important. And I'm—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "I'm damaged, Emma. 5 years of grief? 20 years of violence? I don't know how to be normal." "Good. I don't want normal." Emma's hands covered his. "I want you. Damaged, complicated, infuriatingly noble you. You deserve the 50,000 and a fresh start. I deserve a choice." Emma pulled back, crossing to the briefcase. She opened it, looked at the money that represented everything she'd fought for, everything her family needed. Then she closed it, walked back to Matteo, and pushed the briefcase across the counter toward him. "Keep your damn money, Castelli." Matteo stared at her. "Emma, you challenged me to survive 30 days. I survived. But I realized something during all that chaos and gunfire and rooftop drama." Emma's voice was firm. "The debt was never the point. Saving the bakery was never the point. The point was that I spent 30 days discovering I'm brave enough to want something more than safe. I'm brave enough to want you. Your family. We'll survive. My mother's already talking about selling the building and retiring. The bakery was her dream, not mine." Emma stepped closer. My dream is standing right here, looking at me like I'm insane for choosing him. You are insane. Then we're perfect for each other. Emma reached up, her fingers tracing the edge of his jaw. I choose you, Matteo. The challenge. The chaos. The impossible, complicated mess of loving someone who thinks he's too broken to deserve it. Matteo's control visibly cracked. Emma? Say it, please. I need to hear you say it. I love you. The words were rough, desperate. God help me. I love you so much it terrifies me. Emma smiled, tears burning her eyes. Then stop pushing me away and kiss me like you mean it. Matteo didn't need to be told twice. The kiss was fierce, consuming everything they'd held back for 30 days finally unleashed. His hands tangled in her hair, her fingers clutched his shirt. They poured everything into it, fear, relief, desperate love. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Matteo pressed his forehead to hers. The 50,000. If you won't take it for yourself, let me pay off your family's debt anonymously. Please. Emma considered, nodded. Okay, but I have a condition. Name it. She pulled out her phone, showed him a photograph she'd been working on for weeks, a blueprint she'd drawn in stolen moments between FBI interviews. Holland and Castelli, she said softly. A legitimate consulting firm. You know business operations. I know organization and research. We help companies clean up their acts legally, ethically, properly. Matteo stared at the blueprint, something like wonder crossing his face. You want to go into business together? I want to build something with you, something clean, something ours. Emma's voice was steady. The 30 days are over, Matteo, but the rest of our lives are just starting. So what do you say, partners? Matteo looked from the blueprint to her, and his smile was genuine. Unguarded, real. Partners, he agreed. In everything. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, full of promise. And Emma knew, with absolute certainty, that surviving 30 days had been the easy part. The real challenge, building a life worth living, together, was just beginning. 6 months later, the office was bright, modern, nothing like the dark corporate fortress of Castelli Global, floor-to-ceiling windows, clean lines, a sign on the door, Holland and Castelli Consulting. Emma walked in carrying coffee, navigating around furniture with only minimal clumsiness. Progress. Matteo looked up from his desk, and his smile was the one reserved only for her soft, genuine, unguarded. Morning, partner. Morning. Emma set his coffee down, then tripped over absolutely nothing, sending papers flying. Matteo caught her before she fell, pulling her into his arms, laughing deep, real, the sound she'd fallen in love with. Still clumsy, Holland. Only for you, Castelli. Emma traced the edge of his tattoo, visible beneath his rolled sleeves. Keeps you on your toes. She kissed him, tasting coffee and contentment. On the wall behind them hung a framed blueprint, their first project, their first dream made real. Below it, a small plaque. Where nothing stays broken for long. The challenge was over. The forever was just beginning. The end.